Playground!
Hooray!
Hey! It's my song! Let's sing it! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Come on! It's gonna be fucking awesome! You know the words! It's gonna be fucking awesome! That's it! Sing! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Yeah!
Hi ho, Coolest Geeks. Jesse Blaze Snider here, the Coolest Geek Alive, and I am here today to talk about one of my favorite things. You guys hear me talk about the Muppets all the time. Jim Henson is one of my idols, but in second place, a close second, is Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek. And I really want to start this whole thing off here by just talking about the fundamentals of Star Trek that have been lost since Alex Kurtzman took over producing, since J.J. Abrams did those three movies. Those three movies are kind of like a purgatory for Star Trek. They're very well cast. They did a very good job echoing the greatness of the original series cast. But the tone and the vibe and the ideas beneath the surface of those Star Trek movies and all of these Star Trek TV series that have come out since, they're all wrong. They're just fundamentally wrong. Okay? I am a Star Trek fan. I have spent hours and hours and hours and hours watching every single episode of The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, the original series, and the films at least 2 to 3 times at this point. And that's not to mention like episodes that I fucking love, and episodes that I happen to catch on reruns on TV because I love Star Trek, and when it's on, I just watch it. And it all comes down to what Star Trek is fundamentally. All right, I'm going to throw a little bit of shade here. There's always been the age-old debate: are you a Star Wars fan or are you a Star Trek fan? And I don't mean to insult all my friends who lean Star Wars, but I'm sorry. You guys are wrong. You're wrong. Star Wars is not the superior product, because intellectually, underneath the surface, Star Wars is just like every other fucking thing that you see. It's about war. It's about conflict. Futuristic scenarios without any growth from the humans. Star Trek, on the other hand, is about adventuring through the galaxy, exploring in peace, exploring with a prime directive to not disturb the developing consciousnesses, the developing planets. The prime directive, if you're not familiar with Star Trek, it is the guiding light of Star Trek. It is people going, we are so advanced, we are so superior in the right way that we recognize that to claim our superiority and to push our will against the free will of these other developing nations would be wrong. It would be wrong for us to force our opinion, to peer pressure these other planets who are developing. We need to give them the opportunity to use their free will to pave a pathway for themselves to the stars. That's what we did. That's what we did on Earth, and we form the Federation of Planets along with all these other planets and species that are advanced enough and trying to do things the right way, handle things the right way through peace. So the whole genesis of what you have from Star Trek is there's no conflict. There's no central conflict. Each episode has a central conflict or a problem that they come up against. But it's actually, unlike the majority of shows, 99% of all the shows that you watch on TV, where does the conflict come from? It comes between the characters. Characters are constantly fighting with one another. Oh, look, we got conflict. Well, there is a mandate on the Star Trek show from Gene Roddenberry that the conflict was not allowed to come from the crew members. There should be no petty squabbling amongst the crew members. They have to get their conflict from elsewhere. Now, for shitty writers and shitty producers, this is a big problem, because their myopic understanding of shows and how like a story works is conflict. We need conflict. Most of these people watch these things and they go, oh, there's no conflict happening. There's nothing happening. There's like, they don't understand suspense. They they don't understand the shit that you could apply from an Alfred Hitchcock movie. Like if you go back and you watch an Alfred Hitchcock movie, it's not that there's just constant conflict. What there is there's scenarios that are set up that you want to see resolved, and there's tension that's being built, and there's ominous, vibes that are being sent to you, and it's about how you make your audience feel. And the cheap shot, the cheap road is we're going to make our audience feel conflicted by having constant conflicts. That'll keep the audience interested. There's a lot of ways to keep the audience interested. You don't have to get to the lyrics to your song within the first 10, 15 seconds of the song. It is a cheat code to get to the meat and potatoes, get to the thing that people want a little faster. That doesn't mean that if you don't arrange your song well and write the right music, that your little musical introduction actually will still make it onto the radio and it'll still be fine and good. All these people who are making it within 15 seconds, within 10 seconds, the song lyrics start, whatever. Those people are playing a game of I'm scared, I don't really know how to do this, so I'm going to use one of the cheats. Cheat code. When you're a better writer than that, it's not about just applying cheat codes to everything. It's about constructing things in ways that fundamentally make sense and are worthwhile to you no matter what. And because of the way Star Trek is constructed as not a just conflict-generating machine where useless conflict is happening, the conflicts on Star Trek are meaningful. They fucking matter. It's not some petty misunderstanding. You're not sitting there going, man, I wish this character would just say this so that other character knows this. We're not being annoyed about the conflicts. The conflicts are fundamental. We're out in the middle of space. There's something wrong with our ship. If it doesn't get fixed, the whole fucking ship's going to explode and everybody on the ship is going to die. We need to figure out what this is. What is it? It's something we've never come across before. We have to learn about it. We have to discover it. It's science and it's thinking and it's figuring. And you as an audience member, you're sitting there and you're trying to figure out how the episode ends. What's going on here? I mean, to a certain degree, almost every episode of Star Trek is like a mystery. And like it was always my favorite when I was growing up watching. Well, I'll give you a little history of myself. I grew up watching the original series. When I was a little kid, I would watch the original series, I should watch The Honeymooners with Jackie Gleason. And then after The Honeymooners was over, there would be reruns of the original series of Star Trek. And my dad was a big Star Trek fan. The original series has never quite grabbed me the way The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and the films have. And some episodes of the original series do. But, I was just kind of watching it randomly when I was a little kid, so a lot of episodes went kind of over my head. And I think there is a slight subtle serialization that begins to happen in television around the time that The Next Generation comes out and Deep Space Nine comes out. And Deep Space Nine and Next Generation, they are some of the series that begin tying episodes together, tying character arcs together, giving people longer things. It used to be every time you went to the show, it was essentially like, I know what I'm watching, and the scenario was the same, and the scenarios wouldn't exactly change. It would just be a new, similar kind of mission, similar police mission, similar space mission, similar mission. And that was what it was on Star Trek. You didn't really know that the characters were growing in too much significant way, although they would feel like they were growing as things would be doubled and tripled down on, whether it was Kirk's relationship with Spock or whatever it might be. So it would seem to kind of build on things if you were watching multiple episodes, but they wouldn't be directly tied together into one another. And Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and Voyager, all these, they began to do that. And I don't know if they were the first, but they were definitely some early adapters in this stage of television. And this was the beginning of DVD being released, television on DVD. And I remember I was a big Star Trek fan just like watching it on TV and stuff. And I would always catch the Next Generation in some of the episodes. And I would catch the episodes like when they were 15 minutes into them on TV. And I would get like the general thesis of what the episode was about. And I was always like fascinated. I was like, wow, what's going to happen? And then I'd end up watching the episode to the end. So I mean, like, there's so many shows that where I never watched the first 15. Well, I have now because I've like I said, I've seen every episode at least 2 or 3 times. Once I got them on DVD, it became just like an obsession of mine. I love Star Trek, and but for a long time, so many of the episodes of Star Trek, I hadn't seen every episode because I wasn't like watching it religiously. And I would always miss like the first 5, 10, 15 minutes. I'd just be like flipping through channels late at night when I was going to bed. And I'd be like, oh, Star Trek's on. What's going on? Oh, this is neat. And then I'd watch the show. I'd be like, so cool. So when I started working at Blockbuster Video and DVDs on TV became like more of a thing. And there were certain TV shows that I'd always wanted to see, but I never had an opportunity to see them because, when, you didn't have streaming, you couldn't like just go to Netflix and binge some show that came out in the freaking 80s or 70s. Like that wasn't possible. So it was like you would go buy these things, box sets of these DVDs, and I would buy them all used. GameStop used to sell them used, and I would get like these, like, because they were expensive, the freaking Star Trek box sets. I don't want to say what they were, but I think they were like $50 kind of thing. I mean, like, they're pretty expensive, and I would get them for like $20-$30, like, which would be cheap used, and you'd buy them from used DVDs, used DVD shops. So I slowly but surely went through everything. First season of Next Generation, second season, third season, fourth season, fifth season, sixth season, seventh season. 7 seasons in the Next Generation. Greatest thing about the 7 seasons of the Next Generation is that one of the main characters from Star Trek The Next Generation, Worf, the Klingon character, he is brought over to the other series, the sister series, Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Star Trek Deep Space Nine just so happens to be my favorite Star Trek, period. It's a very interesting show because it kind of basically it gets away with being Star Wars and Star Trek at the same time. The fundamental underpinnings of Star Trek, peaceful diplomacy, coexistence, exploration, all that stuff's there. The Federation trying to behave the way the Federation behaves, but in the face of some real darkness and a real threat of war and craziness from just a faraway, distant star system that they hadn't come across. And there's so many really cool things here about religion, and the Captain Sisko is my favorite captain of the ship. It's my favorite show, Deep Space Nine. And I'll talk more about all these like in general in a second. Deep Space Nine is my favorite, and with the 4th season of Deep Space Nine, Next Generation wrapped up, and they added Worf to Deep Space Nine. And so Worf comes over to join the cast of Deep Space Nine in the 4th season. And essentially, instead of a 7-season arc for the characters of the Next Generation, for Worf, you get an 11-season arc. 11 seasons of his character growth. And he is one of my favorite characters. It's so fucking amazing to see him, on the show, and just like continue to tell his story and like just get it so right. Just amazing. There's 7 seasons of Deep Space Nine. And I watched all of those, and then I went out and I bought Voyager, and there's 7 seasons of Voyager. And then finally I went to Enterprise, which had been kind of wrapping up, I think, by the time it had either just wrapped up or was in its final season as I got into Enterprise, and I was catching up with all those episodes because I hadn't watched a lot of those on TV. And Enterprise, which only has 4 seasons and is considered sort of like, one of the least successful of the Star Trek shows, I love Star Trek Enterprise. I think it's really good. It's a little not tone deaf. What's the word? Like it doesn't have a lot of awareness, self-awareness. Like the people who are writing it, like they can't tell what it is. They can't tell what's working about it because there are things that are working about it right from the beginning. And they keep kind of making adjustments to the show every season. They seem to sort of like overhaul it intellectually in one major way or another. All that said, though, I still found it to be really compelling. Trip Tucker, who is just kind of a human hick, like somebody from the Midwest kind of personality. I forget what his position on the ship is, whether he's like ship engineer or ship like pilot or whatever. But Trip Tucker, I loved that character. He just like he was like an idiot who just like didn't know any better about aliens and all these things. Everything was sort of like weird to him, like, wow, that's weird. But like it was like that's weird, but like I don't have any problem with it, and I don't have any problem with you, and I just want to get things right here. So, how is it that, what am I supposed to tell me what I'm supposed to do? And man, I appreciate that perspective. That's my perspective. In every scenario, I'm just like, yo, tell me what I got to do. I love you. I want to make everything right. Tell me what I got. That's how I parent my kids. When shit really hits the fan and I can't get what I need out of them, I literally just go to them. I'm like, usually I cry. I'm like, you guys are fighting. I can't take it. What do I have to do? Please help me. Tell me, what do I have to do to fix this? Adding the tears really helps your kids to be like, oh, I'm making my dad cry. My kids are fighting, please. But it always works, because that's the attitude. That's the attitude everybody's looking for from everybody. It's like not like I'm going to go use my free will to dominate you, but like, oh shit, I see that we're getting off on the wrong foot. Well, how do I have to help? What do I do? What do I do to help the situation? So that I just love that character and love that show. There's of course those 4 seasons of the show, and then there are 10 films. There's 6 original series films, which are the movies. Whenever you get into the movies, you get the superficial nature of the studios having a big part, a big hand to play, a big influence on everything. At various times and different things, like the backstories and the history behind the makings of all these Star Trek movies are fucking interesting. If you ever get into this stuff, just there's so much to know about the various like histories, because like Star Trek had 3 seasons, the original series. I forget how many episodes that like amounts to, but I think it's like 60 something, or like maybe even less than that, like the original series total episode numbers. I'm not going to recommend the original series to you in its totality just by itself. I don't think that everybody, every mainstream, like I always direct everything that I do at sort of a mainstream audience. I don't actually believe that those episodes in general, I don't think they hold a mainstream audience's attention the way some of the episodes do. Some of them are really great, but it is very campy, and it doesn't really tie together long term, so it doesn't work on the brain in that way where like it encourages you to come back to get more. I'm gonna go over towards the end of the episode like a top 10 kind of list of like some episodes that if you just want to give the original Trek a try and little test out some things there, you can test the waters kind of thing. If you like it, I highly recommend watching it. It's like watching The Twilight Zone or something. It's just like, it's fucking classic, for terms of writing and influence and how many freaking stories have been influenced by this and have come after it. Star Trek, holy shit, man. It doesn't get more influential. And this thing that I'm talking about Star Wars being about war and everything's about war, it's just a fucking Western done in space, essentially. And that's fun. I'm not dissing Star Wars on that level. But if we're comparing apples and oranges, like fucking Star Wars is an apple and fucking Star Trek is a fruit from another planet that tastes better than any fruit you've ever fucking tasted in your life and will heal you from the ground up. It's not just another fucking fruit that we find on planet Earth. It's a fruit we don't find. We don't find a positive vision of the future on planet Earth. Name one. Name one besides Star Trek. Come on, I'll wait. Name a positive vision of the future, of Earth's future. Think about the Earth in the future. Now think about movies and TV and books and things that you've read. How many of those things take place in a future where things have improved majorly, in major ways, where things have improved enough that there's no longer lots of petty squabbling and turmoil in between the crew members on the ship of the team because they've advanced their consciousness high enough that's petty and wasteful and a waste of our time, and they're directing their focus onto these other things that are more important. I don't know another one. I can't name another positive vision of the future. Do you understand that? Do you understand how fucking important Star Trek is? Do you get it? Please, think about that. Think about the idea that the future might be positive only exists in fucking Star Trek. And in my heart, and in your heart, and on every person on planet Earth who's hoping that maybe the fucking future will be a little bit brighter than yesterday was. And in fiction, it doesn't exist except in one place? Holy shit. And what a fucking dastardly, terrible thing that has happened to this J.J. Abrams, Alex Kurtzman produced Star Trek, where they've fucking taken this thing and tried to turn it into Star Wars. And I saw that immediately. The very first TV show that they did, Star Trek Discovery, all I watched was the pilot. I mean, I've watched a little here, there, a couple things. But I'm not going to subject myself to something that is going to disappoint me and make me want to cry every week. And that's what I want to do. Just thinking right now, thinking about Star Trek Discovery, it makes me want to cry. And I'm welling up with tears as I think about it. To think that my children's generation has been fucking robbed of a positive vision of the future, of a notion that maybe human beings are better than their base nature. Perhaps we could move to a new period of time where secrecy and conspiracy and wars and propaganda and just this petty squabbles going on in our society and all over the place would be gone, where we would all live in harmony with each other. It's incredible. And in the face of this DEI initiative and all this shit, and I mean, this is how I know that the DEI people fucking suck. Because those people who are supposed to be purporting all of this positive fucking shit that I believe in, that's why I love fucking Star Trek, why I love X-Men. It's got to be done correctly. It's to be done with honor and respect and love, and not as a repudiation of yesterday and a fucking up yours to the white man. Fuck you guys. Seriously. Without white men like me, people would still be fucking acting and behaving the same way they were behaving 20 fucking years ago. Or 30 fucking years ago, without other fucking people who stand up for this shit, who stand up for the rights of other people who are being persecuted. You don't get out from underneath persecution without the fucking people who aren't being persecuted, who are sympathetic, helping. And you don't turn around and lump all those people into the same fucking group of their oppressors. It's just despicable. Gene Roddenberry, a fucking white guy, grew up writing fucking cop shows and shit, but had an idea about a positive vision of the future where maybe we could all get along. And there was all sorts of colors, there was all sorts of races. The Star Trek Enterprise is filled with people from all over planet Earth. Chekhov and Uhura, everybody's from somewhere else. Even there's aliens from somewhere else, which is what we're thinking of, but everybody's from somewhere else on planet Earth. Scotty. You know, there's a reason why there's all these accents. It's like the Uncanny X-Men. And this melting pot, there's all these mutants all over the place. There's all these people who want to explore peacefully. Peaceful coexistence. And yet these people, part of their DEI guys who are doing all their fucking representation and all these things, you want to know what they thought to do with Star Trek? They made a Black Ops show. Do you know what Black Ops is? Black Operations. Dastardly military action that is so fucked up that they don't want anybody to know about it. And they're hiding it. And in Star Trek Discovery, they reveal that the Federation has had a Black Ops division all along. The Federation is no better than America and Russia and Japan and China and Germany and all these fucking countries today. We're no better. We are no better in the future than we were yesterday. And that's when I stopped watching. That's when my heart broke. That's when I wanted to cry for the future. This is Star Trek. Star Trek, these studios, they were like, Star Wars is more popular ostensibly because it's flashier. So all this fighting, there's all this action, all these things that Star Trek doesn't have because there's a little bit more of a thinking man show. And if you brought in somebody like me who loves Star Trek, I could have helped you to adjust a thing or two in one way or another so that we could get the conflict or the action or the visuals or whatever it was that you wanted out of Star Trek without destroying Star Trek. And that's what they did. They destroyed Star Trek. I feel permanently bonded to a YouTuber named Doomcock. He's the guy who comes on with the big helmet. Doomcock's channel was completely inspired by Star Trek Discovery. The same way I watched Star Trek Discovery and my heart dropped and broke into a million pieces and I went, I will not be watching or supporting this in any way, shape, or form. As far as I am concerned, this is literally like them gutting Gene Roddenberry, like punching Gene Roddenberry in the eye, stabbing him in the fucking rib. Like, what the fuck is this? Over my dead body will I allow this to be Star Trek? This is not Star Trek. It has never been Star Trek. It will not be considered Star Trek. And part of the reason why I was inspired to do this episode is because there's rumors, thank you Doomcock for sharing them, that somebody is about to buy Star Trek, both the Kurtzman-Trek and the original, and they are literally just going to shelve all the Kurtzman-Trek for all time, and they are going to try to continue the next generation basically from where they left off from their continuity, forgetting about everything that was done already. And I am just all for that, fucking full speed ahead, bring in some of these freaking writers who'd worked on this stuff before, bring in writers who give a shit about Star Trek in the first place, and honor the freaking Prime Directive and the writing Prime Directives, like no stupid petty squabbling amongst your officers and all this nonsense, and throw all this fucking DEI bullshit out the fucking window. Star Trek was already DEI. You don't have to heavy-handedly do shit like this. Making the X-Men extra DEI because it was already DEI is just making the X-Men aggravating. It's just making it like a smacking you in the face. Your audience who is reading X-Men, they are already the DEI audience. The people who are watching Star Trek were already the fucking DEI audience. You don't have to fucking hamstring all this shit and wave it in our face. You're just pissing us off. We're too smart to be fucking played like this. You can't be sitting here waving your morality in our face as if we don't share that morality without us starting to go, I'm starting to feel like this fucking show and these writers are talking down to me. Stop talking down to the audience. Pixar is Pixar because they never talk down to the little kids. They never talk down to the audience. And I contend anybody who talks down to their audience in any way, shape, or form, who's some of the audience, you're a fucking idiot. You're a fucking fool, a lazy fool who's taking the easy way out. Oh, they don't know anyway. That's just because you're too stupid to figure it out. That's your job. Figure it out. Figure shit out. Figure out the stuff so it makes sense, so it appeals to the person who is most intelligent in your audience, and I promise you, it will still appeal to the person who is the least intelligent in your audience. That's how it works. Right up. Make people aim up. Don't make things make less sense and fucking matter less and care less. And that's not the way to do it. Whatever. It's like, no, whatever. Don't just give us a generic blue sky beam at the end of your fucking movie. Give us an ending that freaking amounts to the 45 minutes that we watched leading up to that fucking ending and why it's so special. And if it has to be a blue sky beam because of the 45 minutes that came before, then great. That's what you do. But it's not just, we need a big blue sky beam at the end. We need them to fight a bunch of generic characters. Let's invent some generic characters that they can fight. Like, it's just these stupid fucking blanket decisions of like, what we don't have enough of, we need some more of. Blah, blah, blah. This is not how you make art. It's all story and character driven. If the story and the characters drive you to those positions, your audience will be happy with whatever those positions are, even if they don't look like a blue sky beam or have them fighting generic fucking bad guys or whatever little stupid incidental thing that you think you need to add in might be. If it's story driven and if the story matters to the character and if the characters want the fucking story and the results and the happy ending enough, your audience is there. They're fucking with you, man. You don't have to play to the lowest common denominator. You don't have to become Star Wars to be the thing. And again, I don't want to fucking insult Star Wars, but because Star Wars is brilliant, but Star Wars is hey, let's do the things that we do on planet Earth, but in space. That's what it is. Star Trek is not that. Star Trek is, let's imagine what life for humanity might be like if we started to get a handle on our more base nature and became better communicators and had better technology. What would we do? How would we handle it? How would we treat other beings? That is nothing that you can find anywhere else on planet Earth. And if there is, if you're out there and you're like, Jesse, actually, I do know of a positive vision of the sci-fi future. Dude, send it my way, please. I've been looking. I'm so fucking devastated that this is the only one I have. So if you've got one, send it my way. I want to see. Jesse Blaze at jessesnider.com. Also, remember, you guys can write me. Something I forgot to tell you. I'm Jesse Blaze, jessesnider.com. I love you guys all for listening, by the way. So appreciate it. Hope you guys have been appreciating my my change to trying to focus more on positive stuff and get recommendations, stuff into your hands. You know, there's been movies I've been recommending. The Brotherhood of the Wolf, a French film, fucking awesome. Horror, thriller. Animal World, Chinese film, which is like, I don't even know how to describe that fucking movie. It's amazing. Weird visual action drama. Fuck, I don't know. Games based on an anime. It's fucking awesome. Animal World, so good. Reacher, we talked about Monty Python a couple weeks ago. Now, my fucking Monty Python, guys, go laugh and enjoy that shit. I hope that people are. You know, this is, we talked about Jim Henson last week. That Jim Henson's career, all the different works of his, and now here we are, Gene Roddenberry. And have I explained it enough? Are you getting it? Are you getting, like, I mean, I want to cry, man. I really want to cry about it. Are you getting how important that is? It's so fucking important. A positive vision for the future. Isn't that fucked up when you start to think that everybody who writes about the future, it sucks? Terminator, Blade Runner, Star Wars, iRobot, fucking zombie movies. It's all a fucking apocalypse and things suck. Escape from New York, Mad Max. Just things don't improve. They get worse. 12 Monkeys, Outbreak. It's just all nightmare scenarios. And then all by itself, alone in the world, Star Trek. Star Trek. Every single time you spend any amount of time watching Star Trek, you are programming your mind that the future might be better than yesterday. That is how powerful Star Trek is. That is why we need Star Trek fans on planet Earth. We need people who believe in a hopeful, positive view of the future. Because every episode is them trying to do the best they can, trying to bring forward that prime directive, trying to bring forward this positive view of humanity where we've gotten out of our own way. We're no longer squabbling and warring and fighting over nothing. We're here to explore. We're here to learn. We're here to grow. And that's every episode, no matter what the problem is. Somebody wants to fight us. Well, we don't want to fight them. We're trying to make it peace. How do we de-escalate? How do we figure out how to maneuver through this? How do we refuse to just fucking kill them? Star Trek is like Superman at his best. Reason why Superman fans hate Man of Steel is because it ends with him not finding a better way. He takes the easy way out. And Superman's fucking classic power that he's never given credit for, because the credit goes to the writers, is how clever he is, how smart he is, that he's got a good heart, and he knows that there's a better way. There's always a better way, and I'll find the better way. And I'm not just going to kill the guy. There's always a better way. That's the power of Superman, that there's always a better way. And he's the only one doing it, leading the way as an individual. Granted, Alan Scott, Green Lantern, and Jay Garrick, Flash, and there are some classic JSA characters who have a similar sort of morality code to Superman in the comics or whatever. But Superman is that marquee of that always finding a better way thing. And Star Trek is that times infinity, because it's not just Superman by himself. It's the entirety of Starfleet, and Starfleet is a federation of planets, of all different races and all different countries and all different people from all over the star system. And they've come together like-mindedly to say, nah, there's always a better way. You get that? We're not alone. Not only are the humans more advanced, there are other races and they're more advanced. We've rised up to meet them, to befriend beings worthy of better versions of humanity. Something that I think is actually going to happen. It will happen. Not like we see in Star Trek, but it will happen. I believe we live in a layered dimensional realm, and there's a lot more going on, a lot more at play, and very simple reasons why we don't perceive or don't notice how much more is going on, because literally things are outside of our dimension. They're in other octaves of reality. There's all these just different sort of tones. Everything's sound, bang, and we're living in the bang. And then there's another dimension that's bang, and we can't see anything in that dimension because we're in bang. But bang exists, and all of a sudden we start playing bang. We're gonna meet all the other people in that dimension. We're going to meet the people vibrating in that space. So it's really cool, just to think about this notion of, like, not only are the human beings, we've got ourselves together and now we're out exploring. Human beings have got ourselves together and we've formed a big group of nice guys, a nice guy group of explorers with the other aliens who are in the same place going, yeah, we don't want to fuck with people. We're going to be really cool to everybody, and let's go explore the galaxy. Let's learn some things. Let's see what's out there. Fuck, man. It's amazing. It's just amazing. It's amazing. Thank you, Gene Roddenberry. Guy who is making cop shows and shit. There's a piece of me, because it's very interesting, subject that you can get into, of like disclosure and pressure from the military to add different technologies into different movies, depict things in one way or another. It's a subject that you kind of will find an example of there, 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 an example of there. But once you have like 300 examples of, like, really? The military was involved in what? They what? Why? They did what? Why did they want that? What? Like, this is strange. And honestly, there's a part of me that, because Star Trek is so bizarre, and because Gene Roddenberry's, like, the things that he wrote prior to this even, like, it doesn't even necessarily make any sense to me. Because he's going from, like, such traditional kind of role. I think he was a police officer. A lot of police officers in Los Angeles would sort of, like, reach a certain age, retire, and then they would become writers because they had a lot of experience dealing with people. And, they knew how people talked, and they knew different characters that they'd, run into in their existence. So a lot of people came out of that time. But a very traditional thing, writing cop dramas or whatever. So to go from writing a cop drama to writing this, Star Trek, positive vision of the future, where there's a prime directive not to interfere with other beings' free wills, where there are other beings that are on the same level as you, also thinking positively like this, that you're joining forces with the Vulcans and other beings like that. Like, is this military disclosure? Because if you go into alien circles and things like that, and like talk to people who have been claiming to be abducted and all this stuff, and I mean, look, guys, at the end of the day, it's just people's words. So if you look into this information, you're sitting there going, all right, this is this guy. This is what he thinks happened. This is what he thinks happened. This is what but you watch enough of those things and you go, wow, there's a lot of consistency between all of these people having these really crazy experiences. And it doesn't really seem like any of them are like lying. They seem to think what happened. I don't know. I'm just listening to what they're saying. But it's very interesting that something like a Federation of Planets exists, apparently, and something like a Prime Directive exists, apparently. And that's part of the reason why we don't have any interaction with aliens, because the Prime Directive exists. So they're not supposed to fuck with us. They're not supposed to come and tell us what to do. We're supposed to find our own way out of this muck, to find ourselves into the conversation with these higher beings and thinking in a higher level. So very interesting to me that there are so many parallels within, like, you go into UFO circles and you go, really? They say their side, the real world alien thing, it's like the Prime Directive. They say there's a Federation of Planets. That's interesting. So I don't know. Not knowing, I give Gene all the credit in the world, especially because he's the one who said, I don't want any squabbling amongst my crew members. Like, that is so fucking important. I mean, just imagine any show that you watch, right? Imagine any of these stupid cop shows that you watch. Imagine they told the writers, no squabbling amongst these detectives. These partners are not allowed to fight with each other. These people who work at the police station, they're all on the same team. They don't fight. They're all trying to do the thing together. Can you imagine how much more boring the show that you watch would be? And do you understand why that is? It's because there's nothing really fundamental about what you're watching. So, generic cop show doing thing, it's literally keeping you watching by creating petty, simplistic, stupid, useless conflicts between the main characters that go to get you whatever. Honestly, at the end of the day, why are you watching a police show? You watch a police show because you want to see good guys catch bad guys, right? Good guys, bad guys. But what does the show become about? It becomes about how fucking damaged all the good guys are. We talked about the downfall of the Western. Westerns were hugely successful, but Westerns were basically the early superhero films. People loved good guy cowboys. Really disillusioned writers, after like a decade of cowboys things blowing up, as they got more control, they started writing these cowboys that nobody liked. Cowboys who were drunk and rapists and fucking awful people. Awful people, and they were the heroes of the story. Well, guess what? The love and enthusiasm for the Western went away. We like white knights. We like stories of the good guy versus the bad guy. That's what everybody's about. So, but what does the main conflict end up coming from on like these stupid cop shows? And every show you watch, I mean, literally, just start watching shows and go, when there is a conflict, where is it coming from? Is it coming between the characters who ostensibly like each other and are working together? Or is it coming from the plot and the people that they're against and they're fighting against? You're probably going to find that it is always coming from the actual characters who are supposed to like each other, the family members or whatever else. Somewhere along the way, it was became like a trope of where's the conflict? Where's the conflict? Like everything just conflict. But when you do that, it becomes a pattern that is recognizable to the audience, and the audience starts to tune out. I told you this about a DEI. DEI, I am if there is an audience for fucking DEI to some degree, I'm it. For me, I'm like, yay, dynamic. That's different color than that one, and that one's a different personality than that one, and that one's a different thing than that one. I love how different that is from that. Difference to difference to difference to difference to difference to difference. I love it. I love differences, dynamic differences that can be compared and contrasted. I mean, fuck yes. But they're not even fucking doing that, man. They just throw them in. It's just the superficial shit. It's like, more women, more people. But I'm not going to give them any character. I'm not going to make them work for anything. I'm not going to make them do the things that would make an audience like them. So then what's the fucking point of that? You're not doing any help for inclusion. You're presenting racist ideas about Chinese people and Japanese people and Hispanic people and black people because you don't fucking know that everybody is a unique snowflake. So you're not writing everybody like they're your fucking unique snowflake. You're writing everybody like they're their fucking gender and everybody like they're their fucking race. And like there's more race and there's more girls and like, but they're not better. They're not good characters. It's not art. Like these things can be handled great and they can be great. And they cannot piss off an audience and they cannot piss off the world. But instead, we get what we keep getting, which are these easily recognizable patterns of always do this, always like that, and it fucking sucks. So it's just so funny to me, this whole DEI initiative, all this shit, and like, you know, like J.J. Abrams, all that, them being totally, they're doing the thing where they're going with the current popular morality. Popular morality says we're going to add more women and we're going to make it female focused and we're going to, you know, all the different sex ways that you can be, like all this stuff, everything's going to come in here and we're going to do all the things at once, right? And yet, fundamentally, it is the most morally corrupt version of Star Trek you have ever seen. And I'm not talking about gays. Everybody fucking do what they want to do. I'm not exactly just a normal straight dude. You know, I'm some unique version of a guy. I never felt like a guy when I was young. I had to kind of teach myself to be that. I mean, nowadays I would say like, yeah, I'm basically a straight guy, but I'm not. I'm the unique guy that is Jesse Blaze. I'm not even a guy. I'm this unique spirit that is Jesse Blaze Snider. That my body happens to have a penis, but like, you know, and I because I get a penis and because I generally kind of like girls and stuff like that. Even though I don't feel like a girl or a boy, just felt like me. And me, I got a dick, and, you know, I ended up kind of falling into the same boat as, like, you know, most of the straight guys, but, like, I don't feel like you guys. I'm not like you guys. I never counted myself as, like, a typical person. Like, if I wanted to be a dickhole and try to make everything about me, I'd be like, yeah, I'm on the LGBTQ thing, too, and, like, you know, my pronouns are this, that. Like, fuck you. Why are you making everybody, like, do all these unique pronouns for you? Like, are you so fucking weak that you can't just own being a geek, own being gay, own being different? You know, my brother gave me the most wonderful compliments the other day. Well, not the other day. I happened to read this letter he wrote to me. It was very sweet. It was for his wedding. I was really kind of blown away. He gave me this letter. He gave all his groomsmen letter, and I didn't know what to expect from it. You know, I was just, like, expecting some, like, typical love you, brother kind of thing or whatever. And you know what he said to me? He said, it was impossible for him to measure how much I had influenced his taste in the arts. And it was impossible for him to, like, he was like, I don't know where you start and I begin. You know, like in terms of the things that we share, like loves for comic books. And like, I gave him every freaking comic book under the sun, everything that was good. I'd stack them up in order and I would hand them to him. I had boxes. And like when he would want more, I'd be like, all right, here's the next 20, you know, like, and I'd give him more books, you know, and he had a list and the thing, he's like, you handed me Watchmen and you handed me Preacher and you handed me this and you handed me that and you handed me all these stories that are like my favorite ones of all time. And I could go on for forever. And you introduced me to riffs and you introduced me to all these fucking things. And the thing that he told me that just like, oh, I loved hearing it was he was just like, and you, Jesse, you never were a geek like I'm a geek and like I should be ashamed of it. You were like, I'm a geek. The geeks are fucking right. This is the coolest shit there is. And fuck you if you don't know that. And that's the truth. I've always been like that. Fuck you if you don't know how fucking great these books are. And that's what it's supposed to be. It's not a fucking, hey, I'm this part of the LGBT thing. Call me this and whatever. No, it's a fuck you if you can't fucking understand that I'm different and I'm unique and I'm worthwhile. That's how you fucking live. Fuck all this little whiny, like, hey, people, hey, society, can you please coddle me in one way or another? Because I like, no, man. Use this as a fucking catalyst to pick yourself up off the ground and be your unique self. And don't let the world tell you what it is and what it's supposed to fucking be. The way all this other shit's going on right now, it's fucking lame. It's like old Jewish and Italian mothers coming together to like guilt society. Ah, you're not using the proper pronouns. I'm gonna tell your mother. Like what the fuck? Fuck you guys. Fuck this peer pressuring bullshit. It's insane. And from the same peer pressuring group of people who are peer pressuring about all this superficial window dressing stuff about how fucking sweet and kumbaya society is, there's a fucking Black Ops Star Trek underneath it. Oh, look, we're so inclusive. Black Ops Star Trek. So different and diverse. Black Ops Star Trek. In the future, we're liars and murderers, assassins, deceitful cretins. We are just as terrible tomorrow as we are today. Well, I'm here to tell you, my friends, Alex Kurtzman's Star Trek does not exist as far as I am concerned. I don't care. I don't care that there has been a decent season of Picard or any of this shit. I'm not fucking watching it. I refuse to make the fundamentals of this universe, this Black Ops disgusting universe, into any sort of canon in my mind. It doesn't deserve to be, and it is a repudiation of Gene Roddenberry, of the fucking prime directive, of what Star Trek is, what Star Trek is supposed to be. I can't say enough how fucking ridiculous it is that I have to even say this. It's like if somebody did a sequel to the Bible, like the sequel to the New Testament, where they were like, no, Jesus says like, fuck all you guys, you're dicks or something. I don't know, Jesus, but like where Jesus literally goes like, no, not turn the other cheek. I said kick him in the cheek, like, kick him in the cheek. Oh, not turn the cheek, kick him in the cheek. Sorry guys, we're gonna have to go back. We're gonna kick him in the cheek, not turn the other cheek. No, it's the prime directive. No fucking Black Ops in freaking Star Trek. Thank you very much. So this is the last I'm going to say about Alex Kurtzman's Star Trek. It doesn't exist for me. I hope it goes away into a memory hole and we never discover it again, because it is clouding Gene Roddenberry's true vision of the future, which is positive. 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 All right. I've talked about this enough, how much I love this. I'm going to give you just some simple, like the simplest routes to take to enjoy this show, okay? To enjoy Star Trek. Now, I would recommend you start with The Next Generation. Now, I'm going to tell you to skip the first season. The first season, they're kind of finding their footing. The pilot episode in particular is weak. And the first season in general is weaker than the show becomes. By the second season, the show really hits its stride. If you're a cool completionist and you can dealing with some stuff that like maybe isn't like super exciting, watch it from the first season. Start with The Next Generation. But if you can handle it, if you would prefer to like get into it a little bit before you have to watch some of it that is a little bit less exciting, I would recommend watch season 2 and maybe basically watch it from season 2 on. And at whatever point, you might finish season 2 and go, man, I'm loving this. I'm going to go back and watch season 1. But as soon as you start to go, man, I love these characters. I'm digging the format of the show. Fuck yes. Go back, watch season 1. Season 1 is ultimately great. I mean, like, the characters are great. The ship is, this is after the next generation. I mean, not after the next generation. After the original series, here we are. We're trying Star Trek again. Picard is a real departure from Shatner, but in a great way. Really enjoy the Picard character. Riker, his number 2, is a great. He's kind of the Riker. I mean, he's kind of the Kirk Riker. So it's a really cool like dynamic that you get in. Both characters are awesome, and over the course of the 7 seasons, you really get a lot to them, and they're just perfectly wonderful in each of their own ways. The ship's engineer is Geordie LaForge, who's played by LeVar Burton. He wears that visor over his eyes. LeVar Burton's great. There's plenty of episodes about him and his backstory. But better than that is Commander Data, who is a AI. Well, not an AI. Well, I guess you can call him an AI. He's an android. Sorry, he's an android. Oh, wow. There's so many great Data episodes, and the backstory on him and his creator and just stories about humanity and the stories about soul. And Tons. I'll say that I went through. I'm not going to give any specific episodes of any of these series except for the original series. The original series, I will give you a few specific ones because I don't necessarily recommend that to everybody unless you're like a real sci-fi nerd and you want to go and like sort of absorb it. But I believe that every audience can come and watch The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and be very fucking happy they did. So I'm not going to name any particular episodes, but there were episodes being named. Like, it was the first list that I pulled up was like 57 greatest Star Trek, and it wasn't just the original series, but I just wanted to see what original series episodes showed up on that list. And when I was a bunch of the episodes, man, I was crying because I just was reading the descriptions, and I was just immediately taken back to, oh God, that was so powerful. I mean, Jesus, there are some Star Trek episodes that will make you cry. Oh my God, there's some really, just amazing shows, and maybe I'll mention a couple of them. I mean, really, the Data episodes, so many of those just kill me. Amazing shit. Also, you've got Worf, Commander Worf, or Lieutenant Worf, or whatever it is. I think he changes his rank at different times in the series. But Worf is the first Klingon to join Starfleet. The Klingons classically in the original series were enemies of the Federation. And I have a Klingon Empire tattoo on my calf. On my shin. QAPLA, which was my sort of thing of like, I felt like I was a bit of a Neanderthal when I was a kid, or a little bit. My dad kind of like raised me on like, eye for an eye for two eyes. He takes your eye, you take both the eyes. Make sure he never takes your eyes again. Which I remember coming to like Christ, or at least being presented with some of like Christ's ideas like many years later, and I was like, Jesus said what? Turn the other cheek. Fuck. I think that would be difficult. It's like, whoa. And it really spoke to me, Worf, coming from this warrior culture and all these things and being anti-Federation, and him coming into this place. And by the end of, I don't want to spoil this stuff, but at a certain point in the Star Trek mythology, the Klingons join the Federation. And I kind of saw myself a little bit as a Klingon. And I thought, like, well, if this Klingon could wise up and join the Federation, then, like, anybody can. And, like, and that's, again, the beautiful merit and magic of Star Trek is this positive view of the future. It could give you a positive view of yourself, positive view of the actions that you might take in the future, or whatever it might be. So I felt very bonded to Worf and his desire to, sort of be a part of this thing that wasn't necessarily coming natural to him. And and I got my QAPLA, I got my Klingon Empire tattoo on my shin, right in my other shin. I've got a Triforce symbol from Zelda. I'm loaded with some pretty cool geeky tattoos. If you ever want to ask me about any of them when you see me, I've got a lot. So Worf, and I told you about Worf. Worf ends up getting a 11 arc series, not to mention the movies, where, granted, his arc doesn't really last, but he gets at least some more time to shine there. Amazing stuff. One of my favorite characters on the show from the very beginning, I just was in love with her, is Deanna Troi. And Deanna Troi is played, Marita Sirtis? I think that's her name. Hopefully it's so funny. I feel like, man, I gotta write down names and like things where I'm not gonna remember them. But then when I show up and I start doing the show, the names just kind of show up in my mind as I'm talking about them. Like Will Wheaton, like I literally look at him, I'm like, oh yeah, I know his name, even though like I'm not like thinking about it. So hopefully I generally get these things right. But Deanna Troi, oh, she's kind of love interest to Riker, the number 2 on the ship, and she's like the ship's advisor, communication advisor, and she's empathetic and psychic, and she's a Betazoid, and she has these powers, and she's basically uses them to help the captain when he's meeting different people and give impressions of various feelings that they're having or whether or not to trust them and stuff. And she was just as an empathetic character and an empathetic person myself, I really related to her and I loved her so much. So she's a character you probably find a lot to like about. There's, of course, Beverly Crusher, who's the ship's doctor. And she does get replaced at a certain point in time. There's a new doctor that gets brought in later on in the show. There's her son, Wesley Crusher, who the audience didn't really like. He kind of gets rejected a little bit by the audience because he was like a wonderkind. And so people didn't like him as like this wonder kid. Like, he could do everything. He was so smart. He was sort of like a little aggravating to some degree. And the character didn't work. So eventually he kind of like got written off. But additionally, there was a couple characters that get introduced here, like O'Brien, who was one of the characters on Deep Space Nine. He gets introduced first here on Next Generation, and then they give him a much bigger part on Deep Space Nine and have him go over there. And O'Brien's a great character, and I'll get to the Deep Space Nine people in a second. But also you got Whoopi Goldberg playing Gyna, pronounce it wrong. And her character's fun. It's just classically for me. I said, fucking Whoopi Goldberg really kind of pisses me off. I feel like she just talks out of her ass all the time, just about like such fucking nonsense. And I loved her so much, and I just adored her so much for just being a fan of Star Trek, like I was. And it's unfortunate. I think sometimes the older generation. They think that they've come into power. Like, they believe that because the politicians around them know their names and grew up watching their shows, that somehow those are their friends, and that those people are not more friends with the Bilderbergs and the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and all the other people who are paying their bills. That's the truth. That's the truth, that Dee Snider or Whoopi Goldberg don't necessarily want to admit to themselves. I'm sorry, guys, like, their loyalty isn't to you guys because you helped shape them. Their loyalty is to the people who are paying their bills, and they are ultimately never going to do any of the things that we want to see them do unless we hold them accountable. And, and when you believe that these people are fighting for you, what happens? You become partisan. You become a political hack. You're like, oh, gotta go all in on the Democrats or we're never going to save the world. Gotta go all in on the Republicans or we're never going to save the world. I got news for you guys. Neither one of those things is going to help save the world. It's when we start demanding better, when we start educating ourselves better, when we start knowing what's really happening and saying, no more. Not accepting it from any member of the Democratic Party, not accepting it from any member of the Republican Party. Until the Republicans hold their politicians accountable. Until the Democrats hold their Democratic politicians accountable. And boy, the Democrats love to point fingers at fucking Republicans. But holy shit, Hillary Clinton is still hanging around. What are you doing? You're not admitting that you've done anything wrong. You're not admitting that your group has done anything wrong. They have. How do you expect to appeal to the middle if you won't admit that you've done anything wrong? The middle is bigger than the sides. The left wing and the right wing are on the same bird, and the body is thicker than the wings. The center needs to form with the edges. We need to friggin' stop all this petty fighting and all this nonsense and come to a more reasonable place. It's so crazy that a place like Star Trek and a place like X-Men has become like this line in the sand, like Star Trek was always woke, X-Men was always woke. No! X-Men and Star Trek were a positive vision of the future. Woke is literally being dictated by sentences and paragraphs in a DEI thing telling you exactly what to do. It is not about morality. It is not about empathy. It is about following fucking rules. Rules destroy art. Destroy it. Completely destroy the possibility for art to occur. All of your stupid fucking rules. So no, Star Trek and X-Men were naturalistically more inclusive and more diverse, and they could have continued to do that without DEI or anything else coming in to help, and it would have been more effective if it had not been touched by any of this shit that it is now. It is no longer as effective as it was. X-Men was effective. It's not anymore. Star Trek was effective. It's not anymore. You are literally talking about two intellectual properties that have done the most fucking good in this world for diversity and inclusion and changing people's minds about a thing. And now the heavy fucking hand of DEI comes in and literally makes those things useless as tools for empathy. They're useless now. They were useful yesterday. I believe that art is useful for empathy, for diversity, for inclusion, for all these things, for changing people's hearts and changing people's minds in the right way. It has to be done the right way. It has to be handled the right way. And when you handle it wrong, you do what they did to Star Trek, and you do what they did to the X-Men. And it's just this disillusionment where the thing, it's no longer the thing anymore. And when you send people to the thing, or you tell people how much you love Star Trek, what am I telling them? I hate telling people I love Star Trek now. They think I'm talking about all this shit that's been coming out for the past decade. No. Star Trek, the original series, The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and the 10 fucking films are some of my favorite pieces of art that exist on planet Earth. Everything beyond that, it's not Star Trek. Maybe, arguably, those 3 J.J. Abrams films are a little bit Star Trek, but... So, you got The Next Generation. There's 7 seasons. Skip the first season, and then, go watch it, watch season 2 and 3, and then go back and watch season 1. The only thing about season 1, and I forget when he shows up again, but the pilot episode introduces a character known as Q. And when you see him on the show, it's clear that they've interacted before, because the pilot episode, essentially this omnipotent godlike being judges the Enterprise. That's the pilot. Like, he judges them to see, what they're made of. Are they worth it? Blah, blah, blah. It's funny because I wanted to do a very similar. I didn't realize how inspired it was by Star Trek, because you do test at DC. They would have you do a test script. So they said either a Superman test script or a Batman test script. So I was writing pitches for myself, like what I would write. And the one thing that I had for Superman was, I guess, that basically this godlike being came to Earth, pulls Superman out of the planet, and basically Superman has to defend why he shouldn't destroy planet Earth, kind of thing, and has to convince him that the Earthlings deserve to live. I didn't end up writing that one, but very similar to the pilot episode of Next Generation here. Even though the pilot episode isn't super great, it's a little clunky. They're still finding their way. Classically, Riker doesn't have his beard. And his beard comes up in season 2, which is where you should start. So watch season 2, watch season 3. You might end up getting a Q episode where this omnipotent being shows up, and it'll be the only jarring thing that happens, where you'll be like, what? Who's this guy? What the fuck? Or there's a character also from season 1 who does not go into season 2, 3, 4, or whatever. Tasha Yar, who's the initial kind of security commander or whatever, and Worf takes her position. And she does show up once or twice later, again, as a character that everybody knows, because she was in the first season, but she didn't continue beyond there. So those are the 2 little bits of minor confusion. If you don't watch that first first season, like I said, it's really not terrible. But definitely you see season 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, they get re-aired a lot more, and there's an episode or two, like the pilot, that's a little weak in the first season, but amazing. And this will get you going on serialized storytelling. Riker and Deanna Troy's relationship, the history of freaking Picard, and the history of Worf, and how he came to be the only Klingon in the Federation, and how the android Data was created, and there's a lot of wonderful stuff. But better than that are just the episodes. The episodes that Message in a Bottle is coming to my mind, is one of my favorite. God, I don't know if I'll be able to explain it. So many. I love this show so much, and I'm so moved by so much of it, because it's such my education as a writer and as a science fiction fan. And basically, I don't want to spoil this whole fucking thing, but hopefully you'll forget by the time you get to the episode. there's this probe that they find in space. And when they go to approach the probe to scan it and see what it is, the probe shoots a beam through the ship into Picard. And Picard is dead or unconscious, or basically in a coma on the ship of the Enterprise. And in his mind, he is on this planet. And he goes to this planet, and he knows that he's a captain on the Federation, and they're telling him that he's crazy, and he's part of this planet. And he finds out that the planet basically is kind of like Krypton. You know, that basically they don't have a lot long to live. You know, based on all the science and stuff that's going on, it sounds like, you know, their planet and things, like they're not going to be able to save themselves in the next like 50 years or so. You know, like this may be the last generation of people on this planet, and he's working with them. He's a scientist. Because he can't wake up in his body, and literally days are going by, days and weeks and months, and he can't get back to his body. They're telling him he's crazy. He's living out this planet. He's got a wife here who loves him. He's got friends here who love him, and he's living an entire life on this planet as the planet is coming to an end over the course of like 60, 80 years. And he's getting older, and he's got grandkids, and he learns how to play a flute, which is like an instrument that exists on this planet. And he learns songs from this planet and learns how to play. And eventually, at the end of this dream that he's having, the characters in his dream tell him that our planet was destroyed, and we created this so that we would never disappear, so that a part of us would always exist in the galaxy, so that a memory of our planet, of this wonderful place, of the wonderful people. And these people that you have lived with are based on people who lived on our planet. They're real people. And these places that you lived, and this instrument, and these songs, these are real things. They're not here anymore. But we left this as a testament to the greatness of our civilization. And they pull the probe into the ship, and inside the probe is a flute, is a little flute that he learned how to play. And the episode just ends with him back on the ship, having led a whole lifetime, had grandchildren and had a wife and had a whole life with all these people that he cared about. How effective this time capsule is, that he was able to connect with this whole planet and all this stuff. And now he has this keepsake of this flute, but he can play it because of a lifetime of living with these people. And he has those memories. And I mean, it's so moving. There's so many episodes of this show that are like this. And I mean, like, I'm going to go way over today because, like, I'm not going to be able to stop talking about the shit, you know, like if it's an hour and a half today, like it is. But, like, I want you guys to watch Star Trek. It's so worth your time. There's so many lessons from the show, you know, that I've learned. And, you know, I'm tempted to share another one with you. There's another episode. I don't remember what it's called. But, and it might even be one of the movies. But they're doing the Prime Directive. They're not interfering with the civilization. This civilization is about to reach warp technology. They're brilliant. They're so incredible, and they're on the verge of space exploration. And they're hiding there, observing them. And ultimately, somehow they have to come into contact with these people for some reason. And in the end of the episode, they find out that these people are capable of space travel. They've explored the galaxy for thousands of years. But they came to realize that they didn't need to explore the galaxy. They just needed to find somewhere that they liked and be with each other because they liked each other and be happy. And so this advanced civilization was living low-key on this planet like they weren't an advanced civilization, so that Starfleet couldn't even recognize that they were an advanced civilization, only to find out that essentially they're a much more advanced civilization than Starfleet is, because they're past all this exploring. They just want to be with all the people they love and have a nice life. What a fucking lesson. What a message. This is the type of shit that Star Trek teaches you. I've thought about that so many times in my life as I'm pursuing this or I'm pursuing that, and I'm like, fuck, I just want to be like those people who gave up space travel and just are enjoying life on the planet with their family and the people that they love. That is the type of thing that you can learn from watching Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek. Fucking love it. All right. So continuing on, right? We got Deep Space Nine after this. Deep Space Nine, you got 7 seasons. Sisko is my favorite fucking captain. He's amazing. He's insane. The pilot episode of Deep Space Nine is awesome. Unlike the pilot episode of Next Generation, pilot episode of Deep Space Nine is amazing. Comes right out of the gate, fucking killing it. Just amazing. And it is a very different show because it's a star base, essentially. This Deep Space Nine, it's a base. And he's the captain of the base, but the base has people who aren't Starfleet members aboard, including Odo, who's the ship's kind of like sheriff. He's like sort of like the cop for the place, because he's like a middle ground to Starfleet's influence and the other. So it's like, so people listen to him. So they make somebody who's like kind of both worlds. And then there's her name is right on the tip of my tongue, and I keep not being able to get it out. Whatever, it'll come. His number 2 is essentially a lady who's from the planet where the space station is out of. All these names, I'm like, I don't want to say them. I don't want to get them wrong. But there's a planet there that is kind of religious. And this Deep Space Nine thing, they've got like I forget exactly what happens. I guess a portal opens up to this other dimension, and like they're dealing with all of this shit from the Dominion, who are like in the other world, and the Cardassians, and like all these fucking fucked up people, the Changelings, who are basically like running this ship, the shit on the other side. And she represents, I keep wanting to say Bathor. What's her fucking name? But she's great. Their relationship together is really cool because she's not a member of the Federation, and like so like he's constantly trying to like. It's very much like the Black Panther. I always talk about why I love Black Panthers, because like he's an Avenger, but he's also he's a king. And like his first rule is to make sure that his kingdom is happy and like whatever. But also he's a good guy. He's a superhero. He's got to do the right thing. So he's got to do the right thing, but he also has got to make his people happy. And Sisko's in a similar thing. He's got to make the Federation. He has to honor the Federation, but he's also there to be honorable towards these people. And these people actually see him as some sort of messiah. He gets like taken in by the culture on is it Baylor? Whatever it is, about the cult, this certain person who's going to come in and change things for them. So he gets put in a really odd position where like he's sort of being viewed as a religious figure, but he's just a man of science who's like coming into this whole thing. Then also you got the Ferengi Quark who runs the bar that's on the ship, and so many wonderful things that happen because of the bar and the nature of the bar and the type of characters that can come in and the type of stories that can be told in Deep Space Nine are so much a little bit more interesting, I think, because it's not just we're on a ship and we're exploring and we're always in a new place. We're in a place that is staying in the same spot. So there's more over time that like sort of things build, and even like relationships build in wonderful ways. O'Brien, like I said, who originally came over from the Next Generation ship, he hooks up with the ship's doctor, who is really they have a great relationship. Him and Bashir, the ship's doctor, who, like Bashir's like kind of like handsome and kind of like a ladies' man. He's like a single guy, and O'Brien's married, and like so their relationship is very interesting. Like it's like the two boys going out at night or whatnot. But their relationship really makes you like that whole scenario. And then Jadzia Dax is amazing. She plays, I forget what those aliens are called. They got like the leopard spots on the side of their heads, and they're like a symbiotic relationship where there's like a being who's implanted in the body, and this is like an ancient being who knows all of the memories of the previous bodies that it's had. And Sisko was friends with the previous versions of Jadzia Dax's thing. So like now there's a new body and a new face for his best friend, but he still remembers her. That's really great. And I love some of those stories. I love their dynamic. I love their friendship. It's great. And then of course, Worf shows up in the 4th season. He's incredible. There's also great characters like Sarlacc and is it Sarlacc? Something like that. Sarek, who's a Romulan, like a Romulan spy. He's really interesting. He's the ship's like barber, or the space station's barber, and you never trust him. Great stuff. This show is my favorite Star Trek, period. I mean, you can watch it from the 1st season down, but I mean, like, really just watch The Next Generation because it establishes Starfleet in the modern age and all these things. The Next Generation is so great, and Deep Space Nine is that much better because of everything that's established by The Next Generation. So start with The Next Generation, skip season 1 if you want, and then get into Deep Space Nine when you're done. All fucking 7 seasons of this show. You will not be disappointed. It really, I mean, it's as close as Star Trek gets to Star Wars in terms of like the exciting thing. And this is what I'm talking about. Like, you can make exciting shows featuring Star Trek that have conflict and have action and have these things that you want. It just cannot subvert the fundamentals of what Star Trek is, which unfortunately is what J.J. Abrams and Alex Kurtzman have done in their universe. All right. So moving on to Star Trek Voyager, which is I like it significantly better than the original series, and I like it very much, but not quite as great as Next Generation and Deep Space Nine because of a number of limitations. The basic story behind Voyager, and I guess like part of this was like so that it could do things that wouldn't be like affecting anything else, was Voyager in the pilot episode, they get brought very far into the galaxy. They get brought so far into the galaxy that it's going to take them years and years and years to return back to the Federation, and they've lost their means of communication. And of course, throughout the whole 7 seasons are about them trying to journey back to get back to the Federation and trying to figure out how to communicate with the Federation, to let their loved ones know that they're alive, and also being in a completely new area of the galaxy, essentially discovering all new things. Everything that they discover, everything is new. It's always new things as opposed to them interacting with some of the tried and true Star Trek things that you might see on other series because they aren't even near that galaxy. They're so far away that they have to come back. And you get Captain Janeway here, who I think Captain Janeway is a great captain. I don't know where she is in like my favorites. I definitely like Janeway a lot. She might be probably my 3rd favorite captain. She's cool. Her second in command is this Native American dude. I forget what his name is. He's got like this tattoo, but he represents a sort of dissenting faction of Star Trek, of the Starfleet. And there's like this dissenting faction that he represents, and there's a few different characters who are part of his dissenting faction from this like pilot episode that they do. And when they get lost in space, the dissenting faction and the regular faction have to put aside their squabbles and, become a team. So he's the number 2, even though he was number 1 in the dissenting faction to Captain Janeway. And you got there's a Vulcan character on the ship and a girl Klingon or half Klingon. There's a couple alien type characters. And and the mainline human characters are all likable and enjoyable to have around, but really the character that you're gonna love the most, besides 7 of 9, who's cool, which is like the Borg, that they save a Borg lady, and she's beautiful and interesting in her own way, and interesting to explore, coming out of the hive mind and like having to relearn how to be or how to be human or whatever. But their doctor, the ship's doctor, is a holographic projection of a doctor who is supposed to only assist people as a doctor for like 30 seconds. He's essentially like the guy where like you hit the button on Rick and Morty and he goes, "Hey, I'll help you with the thing. Help me get 2 strokes off my golf stroke. What are they called? The me. Hey, me. I forget what those fucking things are called. But that's what he is. You hit a button, he shows up, he helps you with your medical needs, and then he goes, all right, peace, and he disappears. But now, on a ship with no doctor, because their doctor was killed or lost, whatever it is, he becomes the ship's doctor. And he's having to be on all the time. And he's played by Robert Picardo. Robert Picardo is an amazing character actor. He plays Meg Mucklebones in the Legend movie starring Tom Cruise. You remember that green goblin monster that comes out of the muck and Tom Cruise fights? That's Meg Mucklebone. He played Meg Mucklebone. Robert Picardo is awesome and incredible as the ship's doctor. And like he's this rude computer essentially, and just the amount of humanity and so many things that like come through his performance and like just the stories that they tell with him. Like if you thought exploring Data was cool, exploring this character was even cooler somehow. And I don't even know how it was that cool. But like despite the fact that Voyager's like maybe towards the bottom of like my barrel of like Trek, I mean above the original series, but like, oh my God, the Robert Picardo episodes in particular are just like my favorite, some of my favorite. Great stuff. And in general, just the whole thing here, there's a lot of really cool concepts and aliens and things that are introduced on Voyager. Great sci-fi is great sci-fi, and you got a great simple premise of these ships exploring the galaxy, and this prime directive, and you know conflicts coming from outside of the ship and not within the ship or whatever. And they did a couple things in this show too to give a little bit of inner conflict, because there's the two crews that have to come together, so there's a little bit of ship conflict in there or whatever. So they would do things to be able to break that rule the right way, and then have a great show. Anyway. Voyager is awesome, especially for the Robert Picardo things. There's 7 seasons. Once you've gotten into Star Trek, if you've gotten this far and you enjoyed Next Generation and you enjoyed Deep Space Nine, you will love Voyager for the things that there is to love about it. After Voyager, I recommend you going back in time and you watch the 4 seasons of Enterprise. Star Trek Enterprise is a little bit wishy-washy in that they really like struggle to find their footing. Scott Bakula from Quantum Leap, he plays Archer, the captain of the ship. He might be my least favorite captain, even though he's a perfectly fine captain. I like him a lot, but like he just doesn't. He sort of seems like generic captain, like he's like too perfect a captain. But some of the other characters on the ship with him are amazing. The ship's doctor's really cool. I'm forgetting some of these characters' names right now because Enterprise I haven't watched rewatched as often as I've watched Next Gen and Deep Space Nine. But Trip Tucker, who I said is probably one of my favorite characters from Star Trek period, and he's on Enterprise. So even though I don't know this one as well because I haven't watched it as much, there's plenty to offer here. Jeffrey Combs, who's an amazing character actor who plays lots of different characters in Deep Space Nine and other versions of the show, he plays a ton of different characters, alien characters in Enterprise in this season, and he's amazing. There's not a lot of it's more human focused, and it's supposed to be a prequel to the Captain Kirk and Spock Federation, of them like just beginning to figure these things out and just learning about some of these aliens that like they clearly knew about in the original series, but they just learned about them now. With that in mind, it is kind of a cool thing to watch this prequel show that goes all the way back to before the original series, right before you watch the original series. And granted, if you're like super into it by the time you get to finishing the Enterprise, and word of warning again, each season is kind of completely different. The first season to the second season to the third season to the fourth season, you're just kind of like, oh wow, what a tonal shift that was. Like, man, and as soon as you feel like, oh man, they're figuring it out, like this is really getting good, they'll shift it again in ways that like turn away from some of the things that you liked most about the groove they discovered. So that was like a little frustrating with Enterprise, but still, despite all those things, it is amazing with some really incredible performances from Jeffrey Combs and other people who come on to play various aliens and whatever. Trip Tucker is a favorite character. I forget the lady's name who plays the Vulcan, kind of liaison that they have, but she's very beautiful. And and in general, I remember liking all the ship's characters and being very interested in this version of the Star Trek crew. But it only went 4 seasons. They weren't able to find its footing. They weren't able to get the ratings up or whatever, and couldn't quite figure it out. So this show came to an end. But Enterprise I do recommend. And then after that, it's going to go over to the first show, the original series. There was 3 seasons of the original series, and like I said, I think it's maybe something like less than 50 episodes or whatever of the original. Let me see. I'm going to ask how many episodes? How many episodes of original Star Trek? So we can get the right answer. But if you're not, it's 79. Okay, so there's more than I thought. So 79 episodes of the original show. There's 98 episodes of the Star Trek Enterprise, 178 and 176 for Next Gen and Deep Space Nine. So, it's a smaller pool for the original series. But amongst that are some of the most classic episodes, like science fiction stories of all time. And if you're not feeling like, I want to throw back and I love sci-fi so much, and something that's a little bit made in the 70s and is a little bit less serialized and less designed to appeal to modern sensibilities in one way or another, you might not be super enthusiastic about this show. But if you're just a little enthusiastic and you want to watch some of the most classic episodes of Star Trek ever made, here's what you want to watch. Original episodes include, or some of the greatest of the original episodes include, and these are the ones I recommend. I listed 13 of some of the ones that stuck out to me as I was going through various lists and stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, that episode, this episode. I couldn't sit and so hours and hours and hours and hours of my life dedicated to watching these things. I haven't watched. I've watched an episode here or something like that here or there, but I haven't watched a whole season or anything in many years. Last time was probably 8 years ago, and I probably just had on Deep Space Nine in the background because I love it so much and looked up every single time something exciting was happening. But to go through the list and read some of the descriptions, the stories, you remember the stories as soon as it starts describing them, and you're like, oh yeah, yes, that's that one. So here's a few that are pretty awesome. One of them that is considered one of the greatest episodes of Star Trek, the original series, period, one of the greatest episodes of Star Trek, period. It's called City on the Edge of Forever. It's a pretty simple time travel and love on Earth story. Basically, something happens that changes time, and the Federation's never going to form, and the future's not going to work out the way it's supposed to work out because something small in the past got changed. Very simple kind of story. Great. Second episode that I'm going to recommend is called Space Seed. It is the episode that introduces Khan from the Wrath of Khan movies. Khan! This is the actual episode of the television series that introduces the reason for revenge on Kirk. Khan wants revenge on Kirk because basically he gets left somewhere and things go all wrong, and his people are really badly hurt, and he goes out to get revenge on Kirk. And this is where you're first introduced to the Khan character and his sort of super soldier nature, and and what he was sort of designed to do and what he wants to do, and Kirk manages to get him to agree to something else. All right, so number 3. Classic episode, Amok Time. I used to go to a store. I still go to a store occasionally that's on Long Island called Amok Time. And they called it Amok Time as a reference to this thing. It's Vulcan-focused. I think it's probably one of the first Vulcan-focused episodes, so you get some history on Spock and where he comes from and all these things, which is really major. And this is the classic episode that you see parodied in The Cable Guy with Jim Carrey and Matthew Broderick, with Kirk and Spock in a fight to the death. So this is, of course, very classic sci-fi, at its finest. And you might enjoy watching that one. My 4th pick is Where No Man Has Gone Before. This is considered the second pilot episode. It's episode 3, and the things are not fully formed, as far as the crew and the standard thing that you think of when you think of the original Star Trek. It's not exactly there yet in this episode, but Where No Man Has Gone Before, that's the classic line from the opening to seek out new life and new civilizations, boldly go where no man has gone before. This show, this episode is pretty classic, and sets up plenty of the things that you'll see as classic Star Trek trope. At number 5, my pick is Mirror Mirror. It's this. I think it actually is perhaps the first time ever. I think actually I did a research on this, and there was a book that did something similar where there was like an alternate universe where like the Nazis had won World War II and something kind of similar is going on. But I think Mirror Mirror still beat it. The evil parallel universe doppelganger is born here. Basically, Star Trek Federation, they go into another universe where the Federation is evil. And they're evil, and there's an evil Spock with a weird beard, and everybody's the reverse version of themselves, as is something. It's a trope that you find in comics and in science fiction and things all the time. And basically, it starts here. At the very least, I mean, this is the most publicized version of this story. This evil parallel versions, Mirror Mirror, being broadcast to people on television, and really having versus people having to go find it at a bookstore and read a book. There's less people reading books than there are watching TV. And plenty of people saw this, and this science fiction trope has lived on well beyond this first telling of Mirror Mirror, where you get your evil Spock and all that. It's a great episode, worth checking out. And my 6th pick is called Arena. This is the classic trial by combat episode where Kirk fights against the Gorn, the lizard being in the lizard suit. Very classic. Episode the 7th episode, I should say, that I pick is called Balance of Terra. That one introduces the Romulans, which, if I'm remembering correctly, I didn't bother to go to double check my homework here, but the Romulans are essentially like evil versions of Vulcans. The Vulcans are very led by their logic and all this stuff, and then the Romulans were led by their passion and their machismo. They're very violent, very angry, and very jealous and greedy beings. These Romulans. Hopefully, I'm getting that right, and I'm not like dyslexiaing some of this information, because sometimes I do that. I have there's a lot of different forms of dyslexia, and like with numbers, and sometimes like names and like little things. I can flip things around sometimes because it's just like it's like a label, like the label for the thing, and like I'll know what I mean, but I say the wrong word sometimes. So hopefully, I think I got that right. My 8th pick here is The Trouble with Tribbles. Of course, this one is a great one for you to watch if you're watching Deep Space Nine and you get to the Tribble episode of Deep Space Nine, because there's an episode of Deep Space Nine where they go back in time and they intercut it with scenes from The Trouble with Tribbles, and they're on the original Starship Enterprise, and they're seeing Kirk, and they're seeing all this stuff going on. It's very, very fun and funny, and it might be fun to watch The Trouble with Tribbles episode first and then go and check it out. And Tribbles are funny. If you don't know what Tribbles are, basically they're born pregnant, and all they do is eat and reproduce. So like they just start taking over the ship very quickly. It's a humorous episode. My 9th pick is The Enemy Within. This is a simple one that is kind of like done a few different versions of. You'll see that my 9th pick is The Enemy Within. The 10th pick is The Naked Time. They're pretty similar. The Enemy Within, Kirk gets split into a good and evil version of himself. So the one person gets split into two people, and there's one who's evil and there's one who's good. And you get a lot of chewing on scenery from Mr. Captain Kirk. And then The Enemy Within, the Naked Time, the whole ship goes crazy. Essentially, everybody is wasted. Like everybody's like really drunk, and like they like kind of like start acting odd. All of them have their own way in which they're acting odd. It's the classic scene where you see Sulu and he's got like a sword and he's like swashbuckling through the ship or whatever, shirtless. That's from the Naked Time episode. 11 is the Corbinite maneuver. This is considered the, quote, third pilot. And this establishes most of the characters on the show, like, and then the basic show premise. Like, this kind of should have been the pilot episode, the first episode of the series, and maybe it would have been if it was ready in time. Apparently, like, special effects took a really long time to get this one done, and this one does have some cool alien monsters and stuff going on. Corbinite maneuver is a cool one, memorable, visuals. They were showing some of the pictures. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. Next up is one that's like really kind of close to heart for me is the Galileo 7. The Galileo is the name of the ship that they would sometimes use to go from the ship to the planets when, for some reason or another, they weren't able to use the transporters. Because usually it was beam me up, Scotty, beam me down, Scotty. But sometimes they couldn't use the teleportation devices, so they would have to use a ship. And the ship that they used, it looked like well, there was these weird boxy minivans that they used to make back in the day, and my family had one for a little while, and it was ugly as sin. And it was really fucking ugly, the fucking Galileo. But we would call it the Galileo because it looked so much like the transport ships, the shuttle ships that they would use on Star Trek. So I definitely had like a soft spot for the Galileo 7 episode, which is a classic kind of science fiction premise on a lot of levels. And Spock gets down. He's got a small crew on a planet that's hostile, and he's trying to keep his crew safe. And meanwhile, Kirk is searching for them. And it's called the Galileo 7. It's a cool episode. Finally, the 13th pick that I have. And again, if you're a sci-fi nerd or you want to fucking just go for it, watch these. All of them have something to offer for the most part. I mean, there's an episode or two that I'm like, eh. But there's plenty of really cool episodes of Star Trek. It's just not as satisfying as later series are because they are so serialized and they build on each other and they really just get the formula so much better and just they do everything that is done in the original Star Trek better. Honestly, it's like that but better. Some of this stuff is still pretty good. One that I have a sweet spot in my heart for, my dad has a sweet spot in his heart for. I mean, that's really kind of how I got turned on to it in the first place. The Doomsday Machine. And essentially, it's just, the Enterprise encounters a mechanical space monster. This is just like looks like a giant open volcano or something. And it's set on a path of destruction that is like to threaten the whole galaxy. Like it's like this open maw of fire, and it's just going to go around gobbling up planets and galaxies and just destroying them all. And they have to stop this Doomsday Machine. Fucking cool. Very, very cool. So we are probably at an hour and a half right now. Let's see. I'm scared to look. How long have I been talking about this shit? An hour and 40 minutes? Oh my fucking God. But this is Star Trek. You need to do this. We need to do this for Star Trek. All right. I'm going to wrap this shit up right now with the movies. There are 10 movies. There's 6 original series movies. And there's 4 Next Generation movies. So, in this order that I've given it to you to put it in, you'll be coming off of some original series stuff. And you go watch the original films, just starting from the beginning. Star Trek the Motion Picture, it's a little boring. It can be a little, just recognize that it's very paced. It's very pretty. There's cool things about it, and the story's very interesting. It's a little weird though. You might, if you're nervous that it's like, I don't know, boring science fiction, that's a little hard for me to get through or whatever, and I'm not like super into this, maybe you might want to skip the original motion picture and start with the second one. Star Trek II, The Search for Khan. And it goes into, it's not the Revenge of Khan, The Search of Khan, The Wrath of Khan. Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. Those 3 in particular, as they kind of make a trilogy of like Khan, because it ends with Spock getting killed. Spock comes back, the second one, and then the third one, Voyage Home, them getting home from all this like shit that they did. And then there's a 5th movie that's not so great. In general, they say that the odd number movies suck. The original picture movie one sucks, but there's a lot of fans for the original Star Trek movie, and a lot of fans for Spock Returns in number 3. However, number 5, which I think is like Undiscovered Country, a lot less fans of that one. Star Trek 6, though, is considered the original series going out on a high note, going out with a bang. People really, really enjoy that one. That one's quite good. Then when you get to Star Trek 7, that's actually Generations, and that is the original series meeting up with the Next Generation, which is a cool thing to do now that you've gone the whole gamut. And because the Next Generation movies, they don't really affect the world of the the future of Starfleet that you see in The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and Voyager, because those shows were still going on at the time when the movies were coming out. So they tried to not make the Next Generation movies like have too much of sweeping effect or change to the continuity of those shows. So with that in mind, you could save those 4 movies for the last. Generation, First Contact, I think, which is the one where you see the Borg show up there, and it's a pretty cool guy. That one's like the best of the Next Generation movies. Then you got Insurrection, which I didn't hate, but some people didn't love that one. And then Star Trek Nemesis, which is one of the weaker ones, except even though it's one of the weaker ones, it stars Tom Hardy as the bad guy in like an early role for him, and contains some of the coolest moments in Star Trek history. Like, there's like 3 moments, and I can't remember all of them, but I remember like leaving the theater going, man, it sucked that those great moments were in like such a shitty Star Trek movie, because like the moments were really good. Like, there's one in particular I seem to remember of Data, like the front of one of the ships being blown off, and like you're like on the bridge, and there's a hole in the wall looking out into space, and Data has to jump through space. Like, he like jumps off of the deck of the ship to jump onto another ship, like physically jump. And I just thought that was fucking cool as hell. And there's a couple other things like that happen in that Star Trek Nemesis movie. So I do think it's worth checking out. And then beyond that, the only thing that I will mention is, there's the original series cartoon show, which I watched some of that. It's weak, but there are some good episodes. But in general, it's like really dumbed down for kids, and it's pretty weak. But look at a top 10 like best list. I didn't bother to pull that up because I really don't recommend it too much. The animation's not great, and there's only a few episodes that are worth watching, really. But there are a few, and it might be worth checking out if you want to. And then similarly, of all the fucking Kurtzman-Trek, I'm not recommending any of it. But I will say that the 3 movies that they made, of the just recasting Kirk and recasting all of the main characters from the original series, I do think that they did a great job with the casting. And I do think the movies are generally exciting and kind of fun. But they don't mean anything to me. They don't mean what Star Trek means to me. They don't highlight the depth of Star Trek. They're trying to be Star Wars. They're trying to change Star Trek enough so that it can be as popular as Star Wars, so that they can sell the same amount of toys. Like, it's harder to sell toys of Star Trek because those guys aren't like, you don't envision them just fighting all the time. You envision them talking. You envision them communicating and, working through various hoops to fix problems and stuff, but not necessarily fighting. As action figures go, we generally want toys that we smash together. So Star Trek toys, like, they don't sell toys as easy. Star Wars sells the toys because we will smash those toys together. So this J.J. Abrams Star Trek, it's can we make the kids want to smash the toys together? And it doesn't work. You still don't want to smash the Star Trek toys together after watching these 3 movies, even though they have a bit more of that going on. But it's okay. It's because we like these characters for their minds. And intellectual character is actually far superior to physical character. And the intellectual things that we like about these characters are just so much more meaningful, and so much like, it's like, I really believe that, Star Trek fans, I mean, it's like, it's a fucking like, well, I mean, you Star Wars guys go about it the same way. But in general, though, I feel like the Star Wars guys, it's like a superficial thing. It's like, look at my things I collected, and look at all these figures that I have, and these artifacts that I have. And like, I watch these movies a lot. Like the Star Trek guys, we dress up in Federation costumes and go to conventions where we can talk to other people who are nerdy like us and thinking of this better world. And like we're obsessed with it in a way of, we want to live there. You don't want to fucking live in a galaxy far, far away. You don't want to fucking be in that world. That world sucks. Everything about it sucks. It's just all these politicians lying through their teeth, and Sith and Jedi and people getting caught in crossfires, and different races of people, and they're not getting along, and they're all cut off from each other in their own different little corners here and corners there. Meanwhile, Star Trek, you want to live in that place. I get to meet all these other aliens, and we can be friends, and everything's okay. It's like a Positive vision of the future, guys. Very simple. What happens when there's a positive vision of the future? You want to live there. And us Star Trek nerds, we want to live in that positive vision of the future. We want to go to it. And those last 3 movies, the J.J. Abrams movies, they don't exactly give you that. They don't exactly put you into that state of mind. But I do enjoy those movies, and I won't completely write them off as complete garbage. However, everything that came after that, all of the TV shows, everything that they've done, I write it off as complete garbage because it was made with the fundamental idea that human beings are just as deceitful in the future as they are today. And that flies in the face of Star Trek, period. That makes it not Star Trek. Human beings in the future are better. They get it right. That's Star Trek. If you're watching some Star Trek and on any level you're being led to believe that in the future humanity has not gotten it right, then you are not watching Star Trek. That's it. Well, that's all I got for today, Coolest Geeks. I hope that you will launch into an epic Star Trek journey and watch The Next Generation and watch Deep Space Nine and watch Voyager and watch Enterprise and hopefully watch the original series as well and maybe that cartoon too and those 10 awesome films and maybe even those 3 extra ones if you're feeling fucking charitable. But they're so good. I love them so much, and I hope that my passion for this stuff has been passed on to you. If you have a passion for music as well, I do a music podcast every Monday called All Your Favorite Bands Suck. My last episode was on Rob Zombie, previously 311, B.O.B., 50 Cent, Rage Against the Machine, Offspring, so many people that we've done. It's growing more and more. And this weekend, I'm so proud to say I'm doing my dad, D. Snider and Twisted Sister, on coming Monday. My Monday episode's on my father. Really excited about that. I've been re-listening to some of his more recent records and things and finishing off some of the stuff. I actually wrote an article called Father Knows Best. It's like a listing, a ranking of all my favorite albums by my dad and ways to get into this stuff. You know, if you've been enjoying me gushing about all these things that I love, you know, on the geek culture side of things, that's all I do on my Monday show. I know it's called All Your Favorite Bands Suck, but it's just a show where I gush about bands that you should love, bands that are great, that don't get enough respect. And D. Snider and Twisted Sister are one of them, and I'm really excited. Hopefully you'll join me for that episode this coming Monday. But if not, you can write to me, your passionate geek culture commentator, at Jesse Blaze at jessesnider.com. You can write to me on Twitter. I'm Coolest Geek JBS. And, you know, I love you all so much. I really look forward to hearing from you. I love when you guys write me. Everybody's so fucking cool. So seriously, if you've been listening for a long time and you're like, I want Jesse to know that I'm here and know that I appreciate him. Oh, I love getting letters like that. That's the best, you know, when it's just like, I've been listening for a while and commentary on this thing. I agree with you about this thing. I disagree about this thing. Like, tell me what you think, man. I love you and I want to hear. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you will join me again this coming Saturday for another awesome episode where I'm going to be reviewing something positive. You know, every Saturday episode, I'm doing something good and epic, you know, movie. I'm doing shorter episodes or whatever. But these Wednesdays, if I don't feel like I have like some major bug up my ass about something that's going on in the mainstream, I'm just going to talk about major things that I love. And now I did Star Trek. I did fucking Star Trek, and I did Jim Henson, and I basically just crossed off 2 of my biggest things on my list, which is awesome, man. It feels so good to have gushed about how much I fucking love Star Trek and how heartbroken I am about what they've fucking done to Star Trek in recent years. So anyway, I fucking love you guys. I hope you will join me again next Wednesday for another fucking ass-kicking episode of the Coolest Geek Alive. See you next time. Love ya. You've been listening to Coolest Geek Alive with me, your host, Jesse Blaze Snider. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe for more excellent geek culture content. Thanks for listening.
It's my favorite part! Isn't that heavy? I played that! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Coolest alive! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Stay with your tribe! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Revenge of the Geeks! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Week after weeks! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Laughing with you! It's gonna be fucking awesome! And crying sometimes too! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Spelling it out! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Making you shout! be fucking awesome. Talking some shit. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Living legit. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Food in our mouth. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Get in the mouth. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Tell all your friends. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Call right or text. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Raising the bar. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Straight to the stars. It's gonna be fucking awesome. It's starting soon. Straight to the top of the awesome. Passing the moon. It's gonna be fucking awesome. On with the show. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Ready, set, go. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Fucking awesome. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Just wait. You'll see. You'll all see.
The podcast playground. Hooray!